The ocean at dawn was a living canvas of colors, sapphire blue melting into turquoise, shafts of golden sunlight piercing through the waves and scattering like liquid fire on the rippling sand below. Coral towers glowed like neon gardens, alive with darting schools of fish that shimmered like ribbons of silk. In the middle of this reef, tucked safely inside a blooming anemone, lived a very small, very curious fish named Nema. Nema was not like the others of his kind. Where most of the tiny reef fish hid at the faintest shadow, Nema was always the first to peek out, his wide eyes full of questions. His tail was small, his fins often clumsy, but his spirit shimmered with boundless energy. "Come on, Tola," he chirped one morning, poking his head out of the anemone like a child tugging his friend from bed. Beside him, stretching his long antennae like an acrobat, was Tola, a shrimp with a sharp tongue and an even sharper sense of humor. Tola yawned dramatically, then gave Nema a sidelong glance. "You know, little buddy, one day your curiosity is going to get us eaten, and when that day comes, I hope I'm at least swallowed with a side of kelp. I hear it makes the ride down smoother." Nema giggled, ignoring the warning. He darted out into the open water, his scales catching the morning light. Schools of parrotfish parted around him, startled at his boldness. Tola, reluctant but loyal, clung to Nema's back like a tiny rider, his antennae waving like flags in the current. The reef was alive, every color more vibrant than the last. Purples, oranges, blues, and greens dancing like stained glass under the sea. But beauty was always accompanied by danger. Above, a shadow swept across the reef. It was long, sleek, and unmistakable. Every creature froze, hearts pounding, as instinct whispered the name none dared say aloud. MiChi. The shark's form was massive, his movements graceful yet terrifying. His skin bore scars that shimmered silver against his dark hide. His eyes were sharp, glinting like polished obsidian. He was the nightmare of the reef, the hunter whispered about in fearful stories. Nema's bravery faltered, but only for a heartbeat. "We can make it," he whispered, mostly to himself. Tola clung tighter, muttering prayers to any sea god who would listen. MiChi's shadow passed directly overhead, and then he struck. The chase began like a storm. Nema darted between coral branches, weaving through tiny gaps too small for MiChi to follow. Sand exploded upward as the shark's jaws snapped inches from Nema's tail. The water shook with his pursuit, a booming heartbeat against the fragile reef. "Left! Left! No, your other left!" Tola screamed, pointing frantically with his antennae. Nema spun through a narrow crack in the reef wall, scales scraping stone, heart hammering. MiChi rammed against the rock with a bone-rattling thud, his massive body shaking loose fragments of coral that drifted downward like snow. They tumbled into a hidden cave, gasping. Outside, MiChi circled, his eyes gleaming through the shadows. His growl vibrated through the water like distant thunder, but he couldn't reach them. Not yet. Inside the cramped safety of the cave, Tola flicked his tail in irritation. "See, this is what I meant. We go out for a morning swim, and suddenly, boom, shark breakfast special. Nema, one day you'll drag me into trouble we can't wiggle out of." But Nema wasn't listening. His gaze lingered on MiChi's silhouette, watching the slow, deliberate movements of the shark. There was something about the way MiChi prowled, not just hunger, it was anger, pain. Nema whispered softly, "Why is he always chasing us?" Days later, as the reef pulsed with life again, Nema and Tola encountered an ancient sea turtle drifting lazily near the current. His shell was carved with age, barnacles like jewelry clinging to his surface. His eyes were milky but wise, filled with centuries of memory. "You ask about MiChi," the turtle rumbled, his voice deep as the ocean trenches. "He was not always your enemy. Long ago he guarded this reef, a protector, fierce yet noble. But something changed. The scars you see on his body, they are not from prey, they are from man. The words struck Nema like a wave. A protector. The shark they feared every day was once a guardian. He swam closer, eyes wide. What happened to him? The turtle shook his massive head. The sea keeps her secrets, but beware, little fish. Curiosity is a strong current. It will carry you to places darker than you can imagine. But Nema could not let it go. That night, as moonlight filtered silver through the water, he whispered to Tola, "We have to know the truth." Or, Tola countered, "we could not know the truth, live comfortably, and die at a ripe old age surrounded by shrimp grandchildren." Nema gave him a pleading look. Tola sighed, already defeated. "Fine, but when we get eaten, I'm haunting you." The reef was calm, at least on the surface. Sunlight dappled the corals, fish swirled in dazzling shoals, and shrimp clicked their claws against the stone. Yet in Nema's heart, a storm was building. He could not forget the look in MiChi's eyes, the fear, the desperation, and the strange silence after his release. Days passed. The reef returned to its usual rhythm, but whispers spread like ripples in the current. Some fish claimed they had seen MiChi lurking in the shadows, not attacking, just watching. Others spoke of strange disturbances beyond the reef, schools of fish vanishing, currents shifting unnaturally, and echoes of cries that seemed too deep, too heavy for any ordinary predator. Nema felt the pull of destiny, though he would never call it that. He only knew he could not ignore the truth. Tola, of course, protested at every step. "You want to find MiChi again?" Tola squeaked, his antennae curling in disbelief. "Have you finally lost your scales? We barely survived the last 2 times." Nema's eyes glowed with determination. "He's not the enemy. I saw it, Tola. He was trapped, hurt. He could have eaten me, but he didn't. Something else is happening out there." Tola groaned. Something else is always happening, and it's usually bad. Still, loyalty anchored him. With a reluctant flick of his tail, Tola followed. They left the safety of the reef once more, journeying into darker waters. The colours of the corals faded, replaced by jagged rocks and stretches of empty sand. The water thickened, heavier somehow, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. Then they saw him. MiChi floated in the shadows, his massive body still scarred from past battles. He did not lunge, did not bare his teeth. He only stared, his obsidian eyes reflecting the faint glow of bioluminescent plankton. "You freed me," MiChi rumbled, his voice like a storm breaking through silence. "Why?" Nema trembled but held his ground. "Because you weren't trying to hurt me, not really, and because I think you're not what everyone says you are." A pause stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Then MiChi lowered his head, the gesture almost solemn. "Long ago I was the protector of this reef. The currents themselves carried my oath. But men came with their nets, their harpoons. They scarred me, broke me. When I returned, the reef no longer trusted me. Fear replaced memory. They forgot who I was, and I forgot myself," Tola whispered. "A guardian shark. Great. What's next, a vegetarian barracuda?" MiChi ignored him. His gaze sharpened. "Something far worse is coming. The hunters you fear are not me. They are the orcas. They do not hunt for hunger. They hunt for power. They take and they destroy, leaving nothing but silence." As if summoned by his words, a distant boom echoed through the water. The ground trembled. Schools of fish scattered in panicked bursts. Nema's heart pounded. From the abyss rose black and white shadows, larger than anything Nema had ever seen. Orcas, sleek, monstrous, eyes glittering with cruel intelligence. They moved as one, a storm of muscle and teeth. The leader's voice was a low, mocking hum that carried across the water. "This reef is ours now. No small fish, no shark, no fragile guardian will stand in our way." Nema froze. His tiny body was nothing against such giants. Even MiChi's massive form seemed fragile in comparison. Tola clung tighter to Nema's fin, whispering, "We are so doomed." But MiChi surged forward, his body radiating power. Number not while I still draw breath. The battle erupted with terrifying force. Orcas crashed into the reef like living torpedoes, their jaws snapping coral apart as though it were brittle glass. MiChi met them head-on, his teeth clashing against theirs in bursts of bubbles and blood. The water boiled with chaos. Nema darted through the melee, his small size his greatest advantage. He weaved through gaps, distracting orcas with sudden bursts of movement, leading them into narrow crevices where their bulk trapped them. Tola, clinging for dear life, shouted directions and insults in equal measure. But the reef was crumbling. Coral shattered, sand clouds rose, and the cries of frightened fish echoed like thunder. MiChi fought bravely, but the orcas were many. Their leader struck him down, slamming him into the seabed with bone-shaking force. Nema's heart cracked. He couldn't let MiChi fall. Not after everything, not now. Summoning courage far beyond his size, Nema darted in front of the orca leader, his tiny body a fragile shield. "Stop!" he cried, his voice high but filled with fire. "You think strength is everything, but it's not. You'll never own this reef because it belongs to all of us, big and small." The orca laughed, a chilling sound. "And what will you do, little fish?" "Bite me." But in that moment, something miraculous happened. The reef answered. Schools of fish surged together in dazzling formation, forming living walls of colour.